Hello and welcome back to another episode of WTF is AuDHD with late diagnosed sisters Ellie and Paige. We're AuDHD, diagnosed late, and I know I've absolutely screwed it up, and I could feel it. I did it all out of order, and then
I thought.
Sorry. Okay.
And we're here to educate. Are we all good today? You're in a bit of a state today, aren't you, Hon?
I am. Look, we have spoken about PMDD on this podcast before and the luteal phase, and I'm definitely in it.
As well in full swing.
It's in full swing. And I'm on fluoxetine, which is meant to help it, which it does.
It does, yeah.
And I'm still like this. So can you imagine what I was like before?
Oh, I don't even want to think about it or talk about it. It's actually crazy. I'm just,
Yeah, so no, I'm coming in here today quite what's the word?
Fiery?
Combative, like angry at some things,
passionate,
yeah. Probably a little bit more than I would have been 2 weeks ago.
Reactive.
Yeah. So I'm all good, but I am in a mood. So we'll see how this goes. Now, we just wanted to say last week we obviously spoke about Marjorie Taylor Greene's comments on our episode, and we talked a lot about the conversation going on in the US. Since we recorded that episode, there's been more developments. Obviously, you probably, if you're on social media and your algorithms are showing you autistic content, then you will have seen Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s 30-minute speech that he gave about 6 days ago about autism and how he's claiming to find the cause before September. And we don't want this podcast necessarily always be political, and we don't necessarily want it to always be like reacting to topical conversations happening in the media. However, we were going to do an episode today on substance abuse because we have got a lot of requests for that in the Google form. So thank you for submitting your ideas on what you want us to talk about. But because this conversation is so hot right now and we feel we want to further contribute to it from our perspective, we've decided to push next week's episode to be the substance abuse. Mm-hmm. And we are going to chat about autism again and the perception and the stigma. And we will be referring to some of these comments made by Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Apologies if you don't love these kinds of episodes, but we hope that maybe if you're having these conversations in your circles and your friend circles and your parent circles, wherever you are, that maybe our conversation may help give you ammunition for like perspective and giving points back and giving you the words essentially to rebut some of the harmful narratives that are coming out right now.
Which essentially is like, I don't think it's like necessarily meant to be harmful, what these people say. It's just a lack of education.
Yeah.
So I think.
Totally. Yeah. And so we want to just make sure that if we're going to be voices about the neurodivergent community, then I feel like it would be odd for us not to broach these conversations right now, especially when it's such a, it's just being talked about constantly, and it would feel wrong for us to not kind of acknowledge the rest of this conversation because we only touched on it a little bit last week and now it's kind of progressed since. And so this episode will be about sort of the stigma of autism, how these stereotypes are still kind of manifesting throughout society, and how even those in senior leadership roles in the US government are also kind of uneducated and brainwashed by old harmful stereotypes.
Yeah, and like you said last week, this information that comes out of their mouths has the ability to like run rampant. What's the word?
Yeah,
rampant, like throughout the internet and therefore to other countries. So I don't know. I think it's important that we just like address it a little bit.
Definitely, because we don't want these harmful sort of conversations to go any further, and we also don't want other governments around the world to copy and go, oh, they're looking into autism, the epidemic that they allegedly say it is,
the crisis that we need to fix.
So we're just going to speak a little bit more on this and just have a healthy discussion, and feel free to message us if you have other perspectives or if you disagree with anything we say, or comment on our videos, because we do want to have discussions about this. And I think the only way that we are going to get through stuff like this is if we learn from each other and we talk about it. So we'll start off by just initially playing a little bit of audio from RFK Jr. He is the health secretary in the US. And look, I think it's important for us to acknowledge that he's been famously anti-vax in the past as well. And so there's sort of
ulterior motives.
Yeah, I do wonder whether there's an ulterior motive there. That's me speculating, but there's just a bit of context I feel like you may want. Because he's obviously claiming that autism is caused by environmental factors, is essentially what he's saying. And I agree that the environment impacts people with autism.
100%, yeah.
Definitely. And how it manifests, but
it doesn't cause it.
Yeah, it doesn't cause it. It's genetic.
It's genetic, and you have it because your parent did, or and
it's a brain wiring.
Then therefore, when life gets more stressful, you're faced with all these external factors like going to preschool and everyone, I don't know, it's just like for me, I developed tics because I was so stressed out. I think, looking back, I'm like, it's my nervous system's
trying to regulate
itself because it can't. And now for life, so far still have tics. I'm still praying that I will maybe grow out of them, but
and that's coming from, in quotation marks, a high functioning autistic person. And again, we don't like those terms because they're also harmful in themselves. But
if you saw me from the outside, if people see me from the outside, I've gone to uni, I've gone to school, I'm so awkward to talk about, but I've done well.
Yes, you have, and you've according to what we're told to do, you've done well in a capitalistic society. You've done well considering the barriers that you were facing.
Yes, and in the eyes of others, they wouldn't probably see my struggles, but I actually really have struggled internally, mentally. As you have too, Ellie.
Yeah, and again, like this whole point of this podcast is mine and Paige's experiences are completely different, and we're siblings, and we came from the same parents, and this is just again going back to it that you actually can't compare anyone's experiences because they're not comparable.
Like if you literally can't compare mine and yours as siblings that have made up the same DNA, like how can anyone compare anyone else's journey?
Yeah.
I don't know.
No, exactly. That every experience is relative and important and valid. And so we're out here advocating for autism as a whole, speaking from our own lens, yes, and not understanding the full spectrum ourselves. And we've always admitted that.
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
No, go.
Also, another example, we know two twins who are diagnosed ADHD and they have manifested so differently. And those are twins.
No, exactly. And they are boy-girl twins too, so they're different genders. But again, twins who were in the same womb at the same time and very different manifestations
very different.
of ADHD. Yeah. So here's just a few highlights, would we call them, or lowlights of what RFK Jr. said. But
you be the judge.
Yeah, you be the judge of this. Let's go.
Have you ever seen anybody our age? I'm 71 years old with full-blown autism. Where are these people walking around the mall? You can't find them. They're not in homes. There are no homes for them. We know it's an environmental exposure. It has to be. Genes do not cause epidemics. These are kids who, many of them were fully functional and regressed. They'll never play baseball. They'll never write a poem. They'll never go out on a date. Many of them will never use a toilet unassisted. Autism destroys families.
So that's obviously a portion of the 30-minute speech that he gave. There was way more to it, obviously. But I think it's just, first of all, really important to acknowledge that even the language saying autism destroys families is harmful.
Yeah.
Does it make a family life harder? Yes.
Yes.
100%.
Yes, we can vouch. I was more difficult. I know I shouldn't use that word, but Exhibit A, because we didn't know I was autistic, and Ellie was more it was more internal.
Yeah.
But we've talked a little bit recently, our family, about that and how it impacted us as a family, but we didn't know. But I grew up to think horrible things about myself, and that's not my family's, it's no one's fault.
Yeah.
It was like a lack of education and like feeling like I was destroying the family almost.
Because a lot of the conflict within our family happened as a result of, firstly, maybe your behavior, then secondly, mum and dad not knowing how to handle it, and then it just turned into like conflict everywhere. And then I then became like that fourth bystander. There's so much nuance to this. And we'll go into it so deeply if we wanted to. But
so we empathize so hard with families who do like struggle. But this is why we need more education and more like accommodations.
Yeah, totally. I think saying the word destroy has huge weight to it, huge meaning, huge weight. And I think if there's autistic children out there who hear that they're destroying their family, how do you think that makes them feel?
I can tell you, for me even, it's had a huge impact on how I am as an adult now.
Yeah. Exactly. It is that negative language for a start, just that one sentence is enough to destroy the kid's self-esteem for life.
Oh, yeah.
So saying it destroys families is so scaremongering and too much. It's too extreme. Now, I do want to say, Paige and I don't have profound autism. Now, profound autism is, obviously we all know it's a spectrum, but there's profound autism, which is defined by someone with autism who has an IQ lower than 50. That's essentially what profound autism has been defined as. Paige and I don't have that, so we can't speak to that experience, and we've never claimed that we do.
No.
And we've been very open about, as you know, we've only come from our life experience.
Yeah.
And I admit that having a child with profound autism would be really, really tough. And yes, the kids with profound autism, they can't go to the toilet sometimes by themselves. They're completely nonverbal. They self-harm. There are lots and lots of different really sad, tragic factors when it comes to that, the profound autism side of it. However, we're not saying we don't want those kids to get help. We really do want those kids to get help.
Yeah.
And that's why we're out here fighting, because we are verbal.
Yes.
So we are actually trying to use our voice to speak for those who can't.
Yes. Yeah,
And
we're on your team.
Yeah.
We're on everyone's team. Like, although we can't speak to everyone's experiences, like how arrogant would we be to think that we could? We can't. We've never claimed that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yes, do families who have kids with profound autism need extra support? 120%.
Yeah.
Of course they do. And I really, really wished and hoped that they do get more of that.
But it's the way it's being framed.
Yeah.
It's the language being used. It's what they imply.
Yeah, exactly right. It's the other thing that's frustrating about this is RFK Jr. is basing all of his knowledge off his life experience and a few studies that have been done. Yeah, he does refer to multiple studies, but he's talking about studies that happened in the 1950s and the 1960s and then saying, oh, but they don't match today's studies, and kind of going, that can't be right. That's not right.
Shit.
In what other field do we look at old studies, do a new study, and then go, oh, that didn't match the old study, so that's probably wrong? In what field do we ever do that? We don't do that.
Yeah.
We're always trying to advance in our studies. And if we're getting higher diagnostic ratios than we did 70 years ago, it's not necessarily because it's an epidemic, which is what they're calling it. They're essentially treating this autism epidemic like it's a disease that's infecting the whole of America and therefore the world. And it's a tragedy, and we need to save our kids.
And we need to find the cause and then fix it. Like,
there's nothing to be fixed. You're born with it.
We need to embrace it and try and nurture these kids and find what they are good at, because they are brilliant at whatever it may be.
Yeah.
But like, the normal system might not necessarily work for them in their brains.
Exactly. Even those kids with profound autism, I bet you they have a special talent somewhere.
Yeah.
We just have to find it.
Yeah.
And it's hard because you can't communicate with them like we can with our language.
Yeah.
But I know that there's something special in those kids for sure.
Yeah.
Do they have struggles? Yes, 100%. Do we understand it? No, not fully.
No.
100% we don't. But I think it's also a really important time for us to acknowledge that our experience of autism is also valid.
Yes, this is what is really frustrating. It's like, we're not discrediting anyone's experience of autism.
Yeah.
But in the same, like, at the same time, sometimes because we may appear to you or to people like we are functioning well, that our experience is any less or any more, like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, again, like we said before, we can't compare those experiences really.
No.
At the end of the day, we all are on the autism spectrum.
Yes.
And they manifest differently 100%.
And every experience is valid.
Yeah. And your environment does impact how it manifests for sure. But I think you are born with it, and it is the way your brain is wired.
Yes.
And it does generally come from a parent. The other thing that RFK says is that he never sees anyone his age walking around not being able to go to the toilet and head banging on the wall. And he basically lists off all of these autistic stereotypes. Those kids do exist and these people do exist. But he lists off all these stereotypes, applies it to the entire autism spectrum, and essentially says that none of us are going to pay taxes. You're dangerously, he's dangerously applying these small experiences of autism to the entire autistic population, and that's just bad research. That's just poor.
And do you know what? Okay, he uses like the word banging your head. I used to hit myself in the head as a kid, as like a I like small kid, but then also like a young teenager. Like I used to smack myself in the head and do awful things like that to myself. Now looking back, I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm autistic, and that explains that behavior and those meltdowns and screaming like that. Just my parents struggle to handle, which is so fair. I kind of was that, but you're like, people look at me now, and I guess I've been molded by society, and I've kind of learned over time how to mask, and so it's like you can't ever judge anyone's experience, because you might be looking at me going, look autistic, which is like, I just think that phrase is so interesting. There's a lot wrong with it, but
no, exactly.
But you don't know me. You don't know my experience.
Exactly.
So we would never judge anyone else's, and it's just,
It sucks because we are advocating, obviously, for our experience. Anyone listening to this podcast has probably got similar manifestations to us.
Yeah.
So we're standing up for you and us, and we, again, are not here for we can't fully understand the profound experience that also exists. But we're never going to discount that, and we never want anyone in the autism community to not be working together.
Yeah.
So you probably are wondering why we're coming at this like this. Obviously, if you follow us on social media, you probably did see a few comments on our videos this last week talking about this, and there were quite a few comments denying of our experience. And I got fired up, not for us, but for the people reading it who are like us.
Yeah.
We are here to stand up for the high functioning.
Yeah.
Sorry, we are.
Yeah.
And we have every right to be here.
Because also, I just want to flip it for a second. It's been an experience that hasn't been identified and hasn't been cared for up until now. So we are a bit passionate about it, and we're probably going to attract the target audience that are like us, like you just said. Yeah. So, I mean, we want to advocate for every autistic experience, but it's hard when we haven't experienced every experience of autism.
Yeah, exactly.
So, I don't know, it's just...
And I do want to use my voice and our voice to try and help accommodate and go into businesses and promote how you can include people more, how you can be more accommodating. Like, that's our long-term goal, is to make real life change, not just sit behind a microphone and rant for an hour a week. Like, we do actually have goals to do that. But the thing that really frustrated me, just going back to my point before, the thing that really frustrated me with RFK saying that he doesn't see anyone in his 70s, he doesn't see anyone in their 70s going around banging their head, not being able to go to the toilet. That's such a shallow way to look at it once again, because first of all, RFK, most of the 70-year-old autistic people, if they were going to be around, are probably not around anymore. Secondly, the ones that are around were probably shunned so badly in their life and childhood that they're possibly in a nursing home now, or they're in some sort of institution, or they were put into mental institutions in the 70s, 80s, and 90s.
That's what happened.
Yeah.
Like, people who are now, we realize, like, that they're autistic or ADHD, they got put into, like,
100%
psych wards.
Yeah.
Like,
so, yeah, they're not around because it's not because they didn't exist. It's like saying, oh, I don't see any gay people in my generation when you're a boomer. When, let's be honest, so much of the gay population died from HIV in the 80s and 90s. Tragic.
Yeah.
So many of them did.
Yeah.
Also, most of that generation were never allowed to come out.
No.
So there probably are heaps of people still in the closet who are that age.
Yeah.
It's the same thing.
It's the
like
same thing.
They didn't not exist. They were hiding, or they died young because the accommodations and the understanding for them was not there.
No.
All based on the way they're born.
Yeah.
Let's just come back to that.
No, yeah.
All based on the way they were born. Their brain is like that.
It's not a choice.
So
it's
yeah,
not.
Boomers, if you don't have any gay people or autistic people in your generation, it's not because they weren't there.
And yeah,
it's again, these conversations are so shallow, and that's why we want to come in and just give a bit more context and depth to it.
Yeah,
because these.
Yeah, also to say, like, I don't see anyone my age with it. Sorry, it is an invisible disability. It's like claiming and saying, I don't know anyone with genital warts.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, oh, have you seen every person's genitals? Like, it's the same thing. You can't sorry,
No,
can't
exactly.
get my words out because it's like literally the same thing.
Exactly. A lot of the autistic experience actually is invisible.
Yes.
The ones that are blatant, that do have clear self-harming behaviors and need assistance and are non-verbal, they are way easier to spot, if you want to put it that way. So yes, the reason the diagnosis has gone up is because back in the 50s, when they were doing these studies that they're referring to, they were only using very slim diagnostic criteria and only spotting those that looked autistic, in quotation marks.
Yeah.
I never would have been picked up.
No.
Our dad wasn't picked up for ADHD.
My gosh, my parents, bless them, as I've said a million times, they tried. They took me to places. I sat in front of psychologists, psychiatrists, and they didn't pick it up in me. The more we know now, the head banging, the meltdowns, like screaming for no reason. Someone sitting in my chair that I had,
yeah.
There's so many things I could now point to where I'm like, oh my God, I am. But as a kid, like I actually think I was very outwardly, visibly, now based on what I know, autistic. And I got missed.
Yeah, exactly. And often you have a reasonably high IQ, and so you've worked out how to. We're not shaming those who have profound autism either. Like,
no, but that's how I've got through.
But it's true. Like your IQ has helped you get through, and those listening who are high functioning, again in quotation marks because I hate that term, IQ is probably a little bit higher.
Yes.
And so we learn very quickly how to not go unseen. Don't annoy anyone, don't mask. So we get missed.
Yeah.
And it's so tragic that I feel as though when RFK says these things, he's actually denying that we have autism. I think he thinks that autism is just that one profound autism experience.
Yeah.
But it is just not true.
No, there's more experiences.
Way more. And I'm here for every autistic person that walks this earth. Hence why we're so passionately talking about this. And I want the research to go into autism for sure. Do I want to find more about autism? Yes, 100% I do. Do I want more funding and research into autism? Yes, 100% I do. But it's not to try and eradicate it.
No.
It's to try and accommodate it. Because I actually believe that neurodivergence, and I've said this before, is actually an evolutionary thing.
It is.
Yeah,
yes.
I think that we've got skills and senses, including those with profound autism.
Yes.
They will have senses and skills that we don't have.
Yeah.
That they're part of a community. They're meant to be here.
Yes.
And is there maybe a combination of their mum and dad's genes creating that? Yeah. Like, of course, the genes and the interactions of the genes are always going to determine how it manifests. Plus the environment is the next factor that manifests the autism. So I do want research into autism, but I want it angled differently and not implied that it's a horrible disease that needs to be cured, because it's not a disease. It is not like cancer where the rates are going up and we need to find a cause and therefore a cure. It's not like that. We always existed and we always will exist. There's people in history that you can assume were possibly autistic. Again, we don't know, but like Albert Einstein, like there's so many people like that. There's so many people we can point to in history who are geniuses too, by the way. Who were probably neurodivergent and got missed and unfortunately died really young again.
Yes. Yeah.
So it's really, we are all about wanting the research done. We just don't want it implied the way it is.
No, because it's like biodiversity, it's neurodiversity. It's a different way your brain can work for the betterment of humanity.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah.
And therefore it needs to be nurtured, not shunned.
Amen. Amen, sister.
Shit, I thought that was quite good for me.
That's beautiful, actually. No,
I'm quite impressed with my words.
You found your words well then, love.
I was quite happy with that one. That doesn't usually happen, does it?
She's done it 14 episodes in. No, that was beautiful. Another really problematic part of RFK's 30-minute rant is that
30-minute gobble. No, I don't even know what.
Poppycock. No.
Sorry, we need not be nasty.
No, we're not nasty.
No.
We actually do. It's honestly just a lack of education.
Yeah, it's fine.
They're looking at the wrong things. I also feel for, why is the conversation so heavily on autism? Why are we not looking at other intellectual disabilities and things like that and neurotypes? And why is ADHD not getting the same epidemic treatment? I get that there are some autistic people who have really hard lives.
Yes,
they do, and they need to be assisted. And and I do not discount those experiences at all. But I also think the language and the behavior of which we display to those children influences how they feel about themselves. Even if they're not communicating with you, or if they don't know language, you never know. They might actually understand more than you think. And I think we limit people and their own beliefs by what we put on them. There was this really cool campaign done last year for World's Down Syndrome Day, and it's called Assume That I Can. And we'll just play a little bit of it here.
Parents, you assume that I cannot live on my own, so you don't encourage me to live on my own, so I don't live on my own. Teacher, you assume that I cannot learn Shakespeare, so you don't teach me Shakespeare.
Old MacDonald had a farm,
so I don't learn Shakespeare. E-I-E-I-O. But hey, if all your assumptions become reality, assume that I can live on my own. So I live on my own. Assume that I can learn Shakespeare. So, what fools these mortals be? I learned fucking Shakespeare. You assume I couldn't swear, right? Assume that I can do that job. That I can go to parties. Assume that I can. So maybe I will.
I've got chills.
I love that campaign so much, and it is so important because that's for Down syndrome, but it can be applied to any.
It's the
any
language
disability.
we use.
Yeah,
it's empowering, not inhibiting.
Exactly, that is the issue. That is beautiful stuff.
I'm just on fire.
Wow, you are on fire today. No, but that's exactly right, and this is what I'm talking about. I know that there's people with profound autism who don't have language, like she does, for example. However, there must be ways we can learn to communicate with them more effectively, and if we had more accommodations and research done into this, they maybe would have a higher ceiling than we let them.
Yes.
I think that's one of the biggest issues is when we assume people can't do things, they then can't because they don't believe in themselves.
They're not surrounded by people who are, oh, that sounds bad. But like,
totally
trying to.
We put limits and restrictions on people with disabilities or autism or whatever you want to call it. And therefore that is a self-fulfilling prophecy that then manifests. Yeah. And then they don't live on their own and they can't do that.
If it's treated like it's a disease, like they're going to think that they're diseased.
Exactly.
But it's not.
No. And they're going to feel like a burden.
Yeah.
They're going to know that their family feels like shit constantly because they're giving them that attitude without realizing it.
Yeah.
And so we just really want to, again, like amplify the fact that language is so important when we talk about anything. Yeah. That's why when RFK says autism destroys families, again, that word has so much weight to it. And I'm not discounting your family if you have had a really hard time and it's not been great for your family.
It is hard, yeah.
Totally not taking away from your experience, but can we re-angle that? We are limiting people's beliefs by putting language on them like this is an epidemic and this is essentially a disease that needs to be cured.
Yeah.
That is just ugly, ugly language.
And it's not true.
It's not true.
Yeah, like the fact, like it can't even be cured because it's a
neurodevelopmental condition.
like and like you're born with it and your brain is wired that way.
Yeah.
And so therefore we need to be nurturing these brains. Otherwise these kids are going to grow into adults who feel shunned, turn to substance abuse because they feel like an absolute pain.
Yeah.
And God knows what happens next.
Yeah, you can't change a brain. You can't change how the brain is made. Do you want to give us a brain transplant then if you really want to get rid of the autism because it's so horrible.
It's such a crisis.
Yeah, it's literally the way your brain's wired. And are the autistic genes getting stronger in society? Perhaps
because it's like breeding pugs, for example. It's sort of a similar thing. Like you breed a pug with another pug, that gene of that squash nose is going to get stronger and stronger.
Yeah,
it's kind of, I guess, a good analogy to use. Where usually autistic, what I find in my life that I'm drawn to autistic people and or ADHD people.
Yeah,
because we work the same, we find the same things funny, whatever, or we understand each other better. So I think we tend to also procreate together. So people like that neurological wiring is possibly getting stronger, but I think that is like survival of the fittest almost. I think that it's the humanity's way of optimizing and having different brains to help better
the whole world.
Yeah.
It's we're meant to live in communities. We're meant to all have different jobs and work to our strengths and weaknesses. Unfortunately, the way the world works now is we live in a very individualistic society where we don't work as communities.
Yeah.
But I think if we were living as an actual community, you'd probably have me on keeping the vibes up and singing songs.
What would I be doing?
And then doing the dishes. No, but you'd have, that's a really poor example, but you'd have you doing things that work to your strengths.
Maybe I'll take art classes for the kids.
Exactly. Or you might be going out and
foraging.
because you're really strong and fit. And I wouldn't be. I'd be lying in bed Yeah, look at her go.
Sorry.
But this is the thing. I think there are strengths to autistic people, and is the autistic gene getting stronger? Maybe. Yeah, but I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing.
No, it's not a disease.
No,
it's like if it's naturally getting stronger, is that not just like natural selection happening right in front of us, where it's like it's happening for a reason because that neurological wiring is good. The reason why pugs breeding isn't good is because they're forced to breed together.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. They're not choosing to do that.
They're not choosing to do that.
Yeah.
And wwhereas we naturally, for some reason, kind of gravitate to people like us.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly right. So I do think that neurodivergence is a form of evolution. It's a form of biodiversity. It's a form of, neurodiversity, just like we have biodiversity, and everything in the natural world has a role.
Yes.
You know, like every bug has a role, every fly, every bird, every animal has a role in the ecosystem. And I think autism, ADHD, all of those neurodivergences have a role in our very own ecosystem. And so, again, the language being used in America right now is so harmful and damaging, and it is not coming at it from the right angle.
No.
One more point that they make is they say that these kids regress at 2 years old after appearing normal, or whatever you want to call it. Yes, I'm not denying that's probably true, that they do appear to regress.
Yeah, I did it too.
Yep. But the thing is, when we're not taking into consideration environmental factors such as relationships with people, the physical environment around us, it's not about the vaccines or the pesticides or the food we're eating. It's nothing to do with that.
In terms of autism.
Yeah, it's not to do with that. When you get your measles, mumps, and rubella vaccine, you generally get that when you're under 5, right? So, yeah, maybe a child regresses at a similar time to when they got their vaccines.
Or when they start going to school or preschool, or they are not a baby anymore, so they're actually learning communication or not.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, if they may have the vaccine and then they regress, that correlation doesn't mean causation. That's just possibly a coincidence that they got the vaccine and then they regressed. I believe that a lot of the regression that happens, like Paige said, is more to do with once you hit 2, 3, 4, you're now being exposed to kindergartens, preschools, very stressful environments you can't control. You've potentially also had 2 years of your life as a baby where your needs weren't met as much as they should have been, because again, you can't communicate when you're under 2, really.
Yeah. It's no parent's fault.
It's no parent's fault. No
parent's fault.
But it's almost a form of it could be a form of autistic burnout happening at 2, where all of a sudden everything's coming to fruition.
Yes.
And then your child regresses, or they go to school and they're getting bullied, or the demands are too high in the classroom, or the lights are overstimulating them all day long, or there's just so many environmental factors that influence the manifestation and the behaviors within the autism spectrum.
Yes.
That's true. But the environmental issue of vaccines, pesticides, and foods we're eating, it's not right. It's not right. It's wrong.
Yeah.
So therefore, again, we come back to our argument of, yes, let's keep funding autism research, but let's put it into accommodating. How do we make these kids' lives easier, et cetera, et cetera?
How do we build a world that's more accepting of these different brains and nurturing their skills and their talents, because they are there. They just might not necessarily, in the eyes of the capitalist world, contribute to money making, or
paying taxes. Like RFK says. Does the environment impact how autism manifests? Yes.
That's kind of been
yes,
our whole point of this whole podcast, isn't it?
Yeah, it
has.
It has. And now, you know what? When I got diagnosed with autism at 30, a couple of years ago, I regressed in skills.
Yes.
At 30, I regressed in skills because all of a sudden my autism and my actual whole being realized how much I'd been masking, changing myself. And so, like I've mentioned before, masking became harder for me and my skills did regress. This happens in adults when they get diagnosed late because they realize this whole time they've been running off adrenaline, fitting to this world they thought they should be part of, and then they regress in their skills. So if you're an adult listening to this and you've found that you got diagnosed and then your skills regress, that's true.
It probably did.
Yeah, that actually happens. And so, that happens at kids at 2 years old. Yeah. And then it can happen in your adulthood as well.
Yeah.
But it's not because I had the COVID vaccine a couple of years ago. It's just not.
Yeah.
Nothing to do with it.
Yeah. The whole skill regression in kids at 2 or 3 years old, that's when they're starting to learn about society, what's right, quotation marks, what's wrong. Actually, don't really need quotation marks. What's right and wrong in society. So they're probably becoming more aware of their behaviors maybe. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. And also when you talk about a lot of the profound autistic cases are non-verbal. So at age 2, when your kid is not talking as quickly
when
as
everyone else is.
Yeah, when your friends are. Yeah, okay.
You're going to notice.
Yeah, right. But as a baby, the key things as a baby, I think when you might want to look out for with autism is when a baby doesn't fully engage with you in eye contact. Often that can be a thing. Like they won't react to objects in their environment. Some babies might though. Some babies might, and then they regress. Yeah. Again, all the experiences are different.
Oh, it is so
it's so wide.
It's just
that's why the research needs to go into every single manifestation of autism, and anyone who's high functioning in quotation marks that looks like they've got life all sorted out. They are just as valid and should be researched as much as the ones with profound autism. And you know what? It's really hurtful when our experience of autism is discounted when we're actually here trying to fight for everyone who has autism.
We're trying to help. We are, I guess, high functioning, if you want to say in quotation marks. So we, as the ones that can sit here and make these podcasts, we're trying to do this and advocate for the entire autistic community and ADHD and neurodivergent community, because we don't want others to suffer like we did.
Because we were because it was hidden. We really got missed.
Which also, again, it's not comparable. Both are hard in their own respects. And so it is, I will say, very frustrating to see comments that people are making a judgment of a 30-second clip, just seeing us speaking that, our experience isn't valid.
No.
That's not fair.
It's just a quirky personality trait.
Oh,
which, by the way,
that comment was great.
There was a comment like that, and you know what? I watched the full 30 minutes of RFK Jr. this morning. Plus, there was an expert that came in and talked about some research they did, and he used the words quirky and personality, and I was like, oh, there it is.
That's where they got it from.
There's the echo. There's the little puppeteer.
Yap. Sorry, I'm being really mean. I hope I don't get cancelled, but it's just really annoying.
No, and you know what? The reason we're so passionate is not because you and I are trying to be victims and go, oh my gosh, everything's so hard for us. Like, this is so shit. I'm so personally impacted by these comments. I'm not really.
No, I don't.
I'm impacted by these comments because of the people reading the comments who are like us. I want people to see us standing up for them.
Yeah.
And I want them to know that these comments are so uneducated and so not nuanced. They're not taking into the full picture of what autism actually is. They're only taking their one experience of autism and how hard it is for them. They're then saying, well, you're not like me, so you don't actually have it that hard. This is exactly why we're doing this podcast, because we want to undo all those stereotypes and stop gatekeeping autism.
Yeah.
I'm allowed to have autism. I'm allowed to have it, and I'm allowed to look different to what your child might look. Okay?
Yeah.
We're all allowed to have autism, and the fact that the spectrum's so large now is even more reason to put research into this, because they're very different. And level 1, 2, 3 versus profound, they all look very different. Of course they do.
Yes, but that's what we're here to talk about.
Yeah, but at the core of it, it's the same condition, it's the same neurodevelopmental difference that manifests differently based on all sorts of things like other genetic counters, environmental factors, IQ and intelligence, trauma. The list goes on.
Yeah.
There's just so much. And if we want to talk about kids self-harming, and that might be throwing themselves at a wall, hitting their head against a door, that's awful. But I could also argue that my substance abuse for 12 years has been a form of self-harm, and I might die of lung cancer in my 50s because of it,
Yes.
So what's the difference?
Exactly.
It's the same. It is the same. We're still self-harming because of not being understood, not being seen, not being accommodated for, and struggling to live in this world that wasn't made for us. But I can talk. I can talk. Okay.
Let's not judge anyone's experience.
Yeah.
Everyone's experience of autism is valid. And even if you don't believe that someone is autistic based on what you think autism is by looking at them, just shut the fuck up.
Wow, that was profound.
No, but how can you make a judgment?
No, you
how
can't.
can you know? You're not in their brain.
No, you can't.
Sorry, we're a bit passionate this ep, but it's just very frustrating because I think the whole point of this is to advocate, not speak for every experience because we can't, but advocate for every experience and change the language used when it comes to talking about investing in research for autism. So down on that.
So here for it.
But let's like just
re-angle it. Yeah,
because it's not a crisis.
It's not.
And it's not a disease that needs to be fixed.
No.
I'm sorry. I'd hate to be a 10-year-old knowing that I'm autistic and I hear that on the TV.
Exactly.
In America.
Exactly. It's just awful.
Yeah.
And
when you're already struggling, you already have low self-esteem, you're already struggling at school, like you do not need to hear that.
Yeah.
Like assume that I can.
Exactly right. We are limiting our kids. And do people with profound autism in their families deserve more funding? Yeah, maybe. Like, I'm not even denying that.
No.
They need more carers each day. I'm so happy if more funding goes into profound autism.
Yeah.
And accommodating for them, because they do need more physical accommodations and stuff. Again, I'm not taking away from that experience, but I think the funding needs to go into the whole spectrum.
Yeah.
Because we're all valid and we do need to be accommodated for. And I just want you to know, if you're listening to this and you're feeling like you're gaslighting yourself and going, do I really have autism? Because I don't relate to all the experiences. Just remember, it is all relative. It is all different. Everyone's experience is different. And you are very valid in feeling the way you feel right now. If comments from RFK Jr. and Marjorie Taylor Greene have upset you, it's okay to be upset by them. And it's okay to feel, it's okay that you feel this way, because even though you may not manifest in the way of profound autism, you're still valid.
Your experience is still difficult.
Yeah.
Even though you can speak and you can put your clothes on in the morning, you can get to work and hold down a job, there's other
stresses.
There's other struggles that come in other ways, and it could be all internal, all in your brain, which is forced Ellie, or like driven Ellie to substance abuse, me to substance abuse. And I know that suicide is a huge thing for autistic adults, like because it's all internal and they can't handle it anymore. So those people need to be looked out for as well.
Exactly, because no one's putting effort in to understand them. Instead of trying to understand people with profound autism, we're trying to get rid of it. But it's not actually going to happen. Like, I don't think you're going to get rid of profound autism. And why should we anyway? Like, yes, are those experiences really horrible for those kids and those families
to deal with?
Yeah, for sure. But what's the solution? You find it, and then what? Do we abort those babies, do we?
This is the thing.
Like, what is the
What's
solution?
the solution?
I don't get it. Where are you going with this point? This is a dead end. I don't get where you're going with this. And again, stop applying the profound autism and the stereotypes that come with that to every experience of autism.
No.
It should not be eradicated, autism itself. It should be accommodated. And that's, I guess we'll end that there. I think
that's a perfect way to put it. It shouldn't be eradicated. It should be accommodated for.
Thank you very much. We're here next week. Same time next week. No.
Sorry, guys. That was a bit passionate, this one. We promised to talk about the...
Next week, we'll go back to our regular scheduled programming, unless some fuckwit comes out and says something stupid again.
No, we'll just address it at the beginning, and then we'll get into...
Yeah. We're going to go back to our regular scheduled programming next week. We're going to talk about substance abuse and the effect that it has on neurodivergence, and why the substance abuse rate is higher in neurodivergent people. And we're going to talk very candidly about our personal experiences, which I haven't really gone fully deep on this in my life out publicly. So a bit vulnerable, but I think it's going to help others, because I think if I had an episode like the one next week we're going to record, when I was struggling, I think I'd feel a lot less alone.
Yes.
So that's what we're going to do next week. So we will be back to that next week, and we'll stop with the politics.
Sorry guys. Cheers for listening. I hope you did.
I hope you got something
around.
out of it. Yeah, I really hope you got something out of it. But I mean, maybe there'll be some arguments we've said today that you can use if someone tries to deny you of your autistic experience.
Very nice. Very nice.
Once again, we're on YouTube, and full episodes are up there if you prefer watching it. WTF is AuDHD podcast. We've also got a Google form on our link tree if you want to submit your ideas. Also, we want to make some sort of community forum coming up soon, and I've been trying to do some research and work out what the best way is. There's options like Facebook groups, private Facebook groups. There's Reddit subreddits we could make like a private one. If you have any suggestions on your preferred community area, I want to try and be as inclusive as possible. Message us on Instagram, let us know what you think might be the best way to create a little community online where we can all then talk to each other.
Yeah,
because I'd love to talk to you properly and actually have these discussions together in our own little forum. So if you've got any suggestions, let us know.
Yeah, let us know.
Other than that, have a great
week.
Pardon me.
Oh
great
my
week.
goodness.
Sorry.
All right, thanks so much, guys.
See you next time.
See you next time. Bye.